the grey water stuff's absolutely relevant because the grey water policy hasn't been changed for over 10 years. So the Labor government was the last government that actually put some grey water policy in place. Great opportunity now to change grey water policy because it's actually very difficult. If you follow the letter of the law, it's actually very difficult to go and set up grey water for your house, and it would make a lot of sense.
Even harder for commercial premises.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to the council and it was like, oh, you got to go and talk to the health department. You go and talk to the health department. They go, oh well, hang on, there's things that have got to be done through council.
Yeah.
So both of them were playing ducks and drakes. And who do you talk to?
Do you want to know? We might pick this up in estimates to see where they're up to in terms of fixing up their grey water policy.
So grey water is certainly an issue, and I mean, I suppose the thing is that state government says we can't make it rain, and I get that, but there are things that state government can do, and so grey water is one. The grey water policy that stands at the moment, incredibly difficult for a business or for a private residence to actually set up grey water and adhere to the current law as it stands. And I understand there's potential pathogens with grey water, but surely that's something that could at least be looked at, and the policy hasn't been looked at for over 10 years.
But you're asking about what we should have done before this drought had started. That's a classic example of how policy should have been overhauled.
Well, I started looking at this last year.
Yeah.
And I went, and just for me to put rainwater tanks in, the other thing is just the DA costs.
Yeah.
You know, for me to put in water tanks, grey water tank, you know, you've got a DA for this, you've got a DA for that, and then, you know, you've got to get it all done. You know, before you know, you're up to 20 grand.
Yeah.
So then you go, well, 20 grand, okay, it's going to take me 4 years to get my money back. Is it worth it? You know, am I going to be here for 4 years, you know, longer?
But that's why I really like, be it Sydney Water, be it Hunter Water. Is it the council? Who do you get your water from here?
Yeah, so council, our council owns the water treatment plant. Yeah.
So
for the moment, there's always rumours that state government wants to take that away at some point in time.
I think Origin Energy will pay to put a solar panel on my roof, and not charge me the electricity. I don't know why we're not offering the same type of schemes through Sydney Water, Hunter Water, Regional Waters. So you're making the point that you'd have to put an upfront cost of $20,000 to install the system. Well, why can't...
And then some, because I'd have to buy the infrastructure.
Yeah,
so...
but they can do it at scale and effectively charge you over installments over a 5-year, 10-year period. Like it's that's the same way solar works. It's the reason why the amount of solar has exploded in the country is because we had a financing model which made people could afford it. I don't know why we're not doing that for water as well.
Well, it's one of your main resources. Yeah. You know, like...
How much is your water bills?
We pay a bit over $2 per kilo.
As a percentage of your costs?
Yeah,
a percentage of my costs, well, it's probably close to 60% of my rates.
Yeah, right.
So,
it's huge.
It's massive.
And it varies in different businesses. Obviously, motels are probably more heavier users of water than retail outlet, for example.
And also, we pay trade waste for our gardens, our swimming pool, everything that evaporates or used, we pay trade waste on. You know, and for us to go to council and say, well, look, hang on, they want to know how many litres we put on their garden. So they want to put a meter on, you've got to get a meter installed. Again, it's another cost. Whereas if you could capture your grey water, simply run it through your toilets and run it to your gardens, you know, don't put it in your swimming pool or anything like that, but gardens and toilets, it would probably have about a third, you know, so about 30% reduction in our costs, but also in our water use.
Yeah.
And businesses typically are being drowned in paperwork and bureaucracy because everyone wants to have a whole bunch of rules in place and policies in place, when businesses want to just get in there and do it and actually produce outcomes for regional communities.
Well, it makes it hard for us to do business.
How's your power?
Power, well, when we bought the place, our power bill was about $1,800 a month. We've got 60 kilowatts of solar on the roof, and we now you've got to remember we didn't have our restaurant functioning the same amount of time, and our occupancy was lower. But we're now paying $2,200 a month.
It's not too bad.
And we've got 60 kilowatts of solar, so we don't have any power during the day. So that's just nighttime use, which has increased from when we first bought the place.
Yeah.
So if you take it in perspective, it's still a massive cost when you think I've paid off 60 kilowatts of solar.
Yeah.
So now we've got to look at, okay, well, do we go storage? How do we reduce that cost? You know.
And what's been interesting, I mean, obviously this government, unfortunately, and especially National Party in regional areas, no climate change policy, not a bad climate change policy, zero climate change policy.
It's head of the same stuff.
But interesting, two major decisions have been made by private organisations recently. One was by Glencore, who said we're going to cap coal production and then start to go down. That was a huge announcement about 8 or 9 months ago. But then on the weekend, the head of Alinta Energy actually came out and he said, well, we closed down a South Australian coal-fired power plant early, and the major one in Victoria, we're going to close down early, not because they love the idea of climate change and want to be major or stop being major contributors to CO2, but because the economics stack up. Renewables stack up economically. So all these people out there that are,
the only thing we should be doing is apologising for how badly we have distorted this debate and ruined it.
but the chance is there to do something about it.
Oh,
Again,
absolutely.
Even with something that's talked about so much, to have no policy
absolutely
on that.
crazy.
If you've got a policy that says it's all rubbish, then sure, have that policy. But having your head in the sand and saying no policy.
I was in Nyngan a year and a half ago, and that town, staunch conservative area, like, you know, to the extent to which there's any political competition, it's between the National Party and One Nation, as they told me. They have their solar plant.
Big solar.
That's foreign.
No, it's owned by AGL. And they are, and Warren, I was in Warren, I'm meeting with their mayor, and he was telling me he had one application in his planning system that they were trying to get through.
Well, they've got a huge one at Nevertire now, so that's been built.
Crazy.
So,
They're desperate to get this, and I'm looking at this going, there's a huge business opportunity here, there's a huge jobs opportunity here, there's also a huge cost-saving opportunity here as well.
Well,
to get people on their own power source.
Yeah.
Well, the other
but the first thing you've got to do is actually get someone in government to admit that climate change is actually happening, and whether you believe in it or not, then it's still happening.
But see, the tragedy is that every country in the world is going to have to go through this form of transition, and we could have been 10 years down that path and actually developed the expertise that we could be selling to the world about how
That's
you
right.
adapt,
Yeah.
and making a lot of money out of it.
Go and give $1 billion to the CSIRO and say, develop us some strategies and technologies.
But this is the thing. This is in terms of this, like, the world's solar panels was delivered by the CSIRO, and because we weren't able to get our rules right, the people who built it had to go to China to manufacture it.
But the other thing is, though, we've got no subsidies on your storage side either.
Yeah.
So if you go along and say, okay, well, I've got 60 kilowatts, I pump quite a lot back into the grid at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I get paid 5 cents or 4 cents for that, and they charge me 30 cents to come back. You know. But then if I was to put storage on, okay, it's one, very expensive, and two, there's no assistance or no rebate. There is on the panels, but not on the storage side. You know, so you've got a massive area where you could go, well, look, you know, can we add something onto the storage side, even if it was just to work out some way of doing it, you know? Yeah. Because there is no real, you know, rule of thumb of, okay, well, this is the best way to go. You know, it's like that many variables out there, and you know, storage.
I know it's just in the feasibility stage, but I think Atlassian and Twiggy Forest was thinking about building a huge solar plant out at Tennant Creek
and shipping it to Singapore. They announced last week they're building this huge pipeline, this huge cable to transmit the energy. I mean, this is sort of what we should be doing.
So if Australia was to address all its solar needs with solar panels, all its electricity needs with solar panels, it would only need 30 kilometres by 30 kilometres. Obviously, you wouldn't build that in one spot, but that's all we need is a bit over 900 square kilometres of solar panels would address all our power needs.
But once the storage bit comes in and scale, that's when you will see huge transformation in the energy market. But your point is that we've got the conservative side of politics have just put their head in the sand, which means that we can't take the business opportunity or the job opportunity, let alone the environmental opportunity that's presented.
Yeah. Well, we stuck the NBN the same way.
Stuffed the exact same way. Ideology.
Well, the other thing is you've got your power, okay, energy companies are smart, so you've got, where people are producing solar, okay, that's the cheapest, nearly the cheapest part of power, you know, because when you get your shoulders and everything like that, that's where they're upping it, and that's where you don't have, you know, your solar. So your shoulder and your off-peak have come up far greater than what your peak times are.
In this area, Badangra, there's 33 wind turbines at Badangra. They're producing enough power for about 50,000 homes. So it's happening around this area. The River Street Bridge, what are your thoughts on that then?
Well, I'm listening to the community about it, and from what I'm hearing from the community, from what I'm being told, is that there doesn't seem to be a sense that this is something which belongs to this particular community, and people aren't being told the truth, or certainly don't feel like they're getting all the information they need to be able to make up their own mind.
Well, I don't think it's worse than that, because I don't think it's even a chance of make up your own mind, because the decision's been made, and there'll be no communication, no consultation with the community, because it's just going ahead, and it's not really something that's going to benefit this community. And probably the most frustrating part is the threats that we're hearing now about, well, it's $140 million, take that money, or you're going to lose it. Well, it's still public money. It should still be spent in the best possible way, and I just don't think it is being spent in the best possible way.
I hear all across New South Wales and regional New South Wales that when it comes to RMS, they act like they're an occupying power in a city or a town. They don't come across like they're a neighbour, and they do put such threats on the table. And I think if Dubbo is being told that you either have this bridge or nothing, Dubbo's entitled to be very angry about that, because that's not the way any state government should be treating its citizens whatsoever. This isn't something that you need to be negotiating by putting guns to people's heads. And I think, Dubbo's as right to be treated as fairly as every other place when such things are offered. And the Dubbo community should have a say to say whether or not this $140 million is the best use of public funds for the city of Dubbo. And I just think it's pretty tragic that we're so far down this track and the Dubbo community feels totally alienated about this bridge.
No. And some people now are saying, well, we give up. Yeah. We'll just take the $140 million if that's all that's being offered. I suppose we'll take it. But then, down the track, we'll get fewer opportunities because the government will tell us we've already had $140 million spent in the community.
Which is why, Sydney would never put up with a take it or leave it offer like that. That just never would go. That would not fly in the biggest city. So it shouldn't fly in Dubbo City either. It shouldn't be just because you're from a regional city that you should be treated any differently. Yeah. And I think that if the same style of tactic was being applied, for example, the West Connects project in the inner city of Sydney, those communities would be in uproar. So if it's not good enough for Sydney, it shouldn't be good enough for Dubbo.
Yeah. Spot on. So we've also got issues around, obviously, water at the moment. And again, part of the problem that I see there is that some announcements today in the media from the government are way too late. Yeah. And now's not the time to be doing planning for that. Yeah. We've talked about grey water already, but just planning for water when we had great water times back in 2016 or even back in previous times when we've had good amounts of water without the pressure and the stress of that, planning for what we can do with water to make it better. Now, you can't wave a magic wand and make it rain, but what are the sort of things that you'd see we'd be doing to help the situation now if we planned it in the past, sorry?
Well, again, you made a good point, which is the worst time to plan for a drought is while you're in the middle of it. It's when you have to make decisions under the worst forms of pressure. I think that the lessons to be learned from this drought, and we're still in this drought and we don't know when it's going to break, but the lesson to be learned from this is that we now have to plan for drought all the time. We can no longer just assume that we're going to get the same average rainfall we've had for the last 100 years. Whether you believe the science or not, it's pretty obvious the climate is changing. And if we're going to have communities like Dubbo thrive in a climate-constrained and climate-changed world, then drought resilience and drought planning has got to be core to what the state government does, to what local government does, and what business does. So the things which I'd like to see to the state government, the lesson that I think the state government should be learning is long-term planning around infrastructure, proper review of policies, be it grey water or others as well, but also let's be honest to small businesses. It's tough to get through it, and we shouldn't, we need to make sure that the forms of assistance that are available is available to all of regional New South Wales, not just farms, which is why we're arguing all throughout Western New South Wales. This drought has been going on now for so long that we can't just cut off the compassion at the farm gate. Compassion has to reach Main Street too, which is why we think the state government's emergency drought assistance relief policies, small businesses should be able to ask for help if they need it.
Right. Because small businesses are impacted, and Dubbo's probably pretty resilient in that we've got a smaller percentage of our population, about 2.5% of the population is involved in agricultural industries here, but when you go a bit further west, you only need to go to somewhere like a Narromine or a Gilgandra, suddenly that percentage jumps up dramatically to 20-30% of the industry in that community is directly related to the agricultural industry.
Well, I was in Gilgandra this morning and I was just talking to one business which has nothing to do with farming, but they're making the point that because the farms don't have any income, no one's buying in their shop. And I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to understand just how much small businesses depend on big businesses, and all businesses depend on each other, particularly in regional economies. So when one of them's doing bad, the other one's not. So which is kind of why, I'm desperately begging the government to steal Labor's policy on this. I'm very happy if they were to steal Labor's policy on this and make available this form of drought assistance to small businesses. The other lesson is that when a small business disappears from a town like to Gandra, if it's gone from the main street of Coonabarabran or Dubbo, we know it takes twice as long for another business to come back and take its place, which is why we've got to back the businesses that are there already and make sure they get through this tough time. Yeah. Because otherwise, if they disappear, we'll be waiting a very long time for another one to come in its place.
Matthew and I briefly chatted over the fact of drought relief.
Yeah.
You know, where people in the city go, I'll help. They go into Woolies or Coles and they buy $100 worth of groceries. It gets stuck on a truck and sent out to a rural community. It's great for the farmer. No good for the local IGA, no good for the corner store, no good for for the actual community for two reasons. One, they miss out on that week, but they also miss out on the following week where they don't get the sale.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I'm following the saga in Walgett about the loss of their supermarket. I mean, it burnt down, I accept that, but Walgett is a big place and it's gone without a supermarket now for over a year. And that, I think, is a sign that I'm not sure confidence is returned enough for a business to want to set up there. And meanwhile, the people of Walgett have to pay much higher prices for their groceries because there's not competition that we could take for granted in other places as well, which I think is really problematic. But you do make a good point. Like, I mean, it's very easy to sort of tick a box or buy something and hope that you're helping farmers, and that's great. But we have to be helping everyone in regional New South Wales, not just limiting our compassion to people on the farm, as important as that is. There's an ecosystem here that we have to make sure survives.
Well, 2% of the population you said was related to agriculture.
2.5,
2.5. Yeah. You have a look at the retail and the hospitality.
Yeah.
And how much of an employer they are in the local community. If you start pulling that section out of the community, what impacts are going to have on the town? That's going to have a massive impact.
Yeah, retail in Dubbo employs 14.4% of the employees in Dubbo, so huge impact.
Yep. Simple things like online shopping. People go buy stuff, comes to them. It has an impact.
Yeah, it does.
There was a thing that the local Chamber of Commerce were trying to get up and running as a buy local, that sort of stuff. It's a massive thing where people, Australia Post, their focus is online shopping. They're not worried about your day-to-day letters. Their focus is getting those parcels out.
True.
Because that's growing at 10%.
True.
So.